Karpov's amazing endgame technique. Be ready to be dazzled, amazed. It's mind blowing. Well, if anyway, it was when I was a young player starting with chess. I found the following endgame to be, well, out of this world. I just couldn't get it really. It was. But I really learned a lot from this game, and I was thinking about it for a long time. Now I'm older, and I think it's your turn to think about this game. It's from the 1984 World Championship match, Karpov versus Kasparov. This was the famous match that was, well, stopped before it was concluded due to fatigue from Karpov. They were afraid of his health. Anyway, let's get going. Karpov is white. And of course, Kasparov had a good score against Karpov in the end, but in the beginning, he was just getting slaughtered and learned a lot. And it was 5-0 before Kasparov managed to score his first point. He was one defeat away from losing his title. Anyway, Karpov was, when in the beginning of his career, he's played e4, but here he had switched to d4. Anyway, we go through kind of quickly through the opening. This is the Tara's defense. Kasparov, after this match, he gave it up. It was not a good idea against Karpov to go for this kind of position where you just get a slight weakness from the beginning. The isolated queen's pawn. Okay. And all this is standard theory. Nikos and Ogord wrote an excellent book about this, if you're interested for black, and also if you're interested for white. And this queen b3 is not considered the most topical nowadays. By the way, against bishop d5, c4 is maybe also interesting. Anyway, this is was known theory. This is what they played at the time, and this I like this maneuver, putting the bishop here and getting ready to attack the weak pawn with the bishop and the knight. There, of course, is a problem here. The pin is what's bothering black, but oh, please notice there's also another idea for white, and that is attacking this pawn here. Black, on the other hand, has open files for his rooks. They're also on this one here, and the bishops are active, the knights are active. There's only one downside. He has a weakness on g7 and d5. Bishop c5. And we'll, as I said, we'll go quickly through this because this is not the interesting part. Attacking the bishop, rook, attacking here, queen moves, all natural moves here. And basically they're maneuvering around. He cannot take back with the pawn. That would have been nice, but the rook is hanging on d8. Okay, and yeah, white is probably slightly better here. Black didn't like the exchanges, but it looks like he's getting enough activity. But Karpov was a master of these positions, and the thing is with Karpov, you never really get out. You will have an unpleasant position forever. It might be a draw, or it is probably a draw, and it's probably a draw for a long time. But unless you're a computer, you'll get tired and you'll lose the position, especially against a guy like Karpov that keeps setting subtle traps everywhere. And here they exchange queens, and that's maybe not the best idea, but then again, what to do? And of course, this kind of position, it should be a draw, but black does have this bishop, which is a problem because this pawn is on white. And notice that these pawns are also on white, making this bishop a bad bishop. But as we all know, bad bishops defend good pawns. Okay, Karpov will keep on putting a little bit of pressure here, and Karpov will, of course, put the pawns on the black squares. E3, and there were now all white's black's pawn are on white squares. It's not a disaster yet because at the moment, even though the bishop is bad, black only has one weakness, and the rest of his pieces are good. And Karpov will skillfully do nothing, basically. And there goes another pawn on white square. Again, it was from a white square, but somehow the thing is you don't want to give the b5 square away, and black is hoping one day to create some counterplay, maybe with with something like this, kicking the knight away. This knight is very good here in the isolated queen pawn position. Both sort of solidifying it's defended on the queen side, and it's attacking the weakness on d5. Okay, and he realized here that if he takes back with what black really would love to do was take back with the pawn here, but there are some problems. Okay, we can see it because here white will get very active and put the rook here, and where after, of course, a5, rook b5, and he'll have to defend passively for a long time, and he'll have a very active rook, and this is clearly better for white. Anyway, rook d4. Do you want to exchange? Maybe. King of a. Okay, this position, it's of course a draw. It should be a draw. But there are some problems for black. Mostly that all his pawns are on the same color as his bishops. If it was a knight ending, it would be totally drawn, unless one of them had a very active king. Okay, getting the king active, but white has an idea here. He can start sort of massaging the pawns, and it looks like a nice square for the knight. It will come in here and sit nicely on the white squares, and black doesn't have the same luxury because white still has pawns on the black squares. f3, and this is all very common. H4 and knight a6. Yes, king f2, f6, and maybe he should not. Maybe he should just keep the pawns on white. Just saying, okay, I don't have to. If his pawn was back on a7 and b7, he would put them on black and say, okay, I'll put all my pawns on black, and you only have this pawn on d5 on the white squares. Then I have one weakness. I'm fine. I'm good. The problem is here it's not possible anymore because these pawns, oh, they're not getting away from the white squares anytime soon. Bishop d3. Okay, so what's the point of that move? Black's plan was clear with f6. He wanted to attack this pawn and clearing the king side, or forcing taking, and then black will have the chance to get an outside passed pawn. But of course here white plays this move. And that's probably kind of easy because, well, knights are pretty good in symmetrical positions when they have enough room to maneuver, and at the same time can stand on some secure squares. And here black has definitely a bad bishop because it's on the white squares. It cannot attack anything. It can only defend, and it can sometimes get into zugzwang. That's when you're forced to move. Okay, knight e3, attacking the bishop, goes. And here white plays are very, well, it's a good move, just making sure nothing happens on the queen side with the pawns on the white squares. They will remain on the white squares. Okay, this is a very instructive moment. Here black should definitely play bishop back and say, okay, I'm worse, and white can maneuver around with that knight for a long time. He will try something, maybe with g4 and trying to force his way into the king side, but it should be okay for black. It should be okay for black. But I think it's in practical game it will be very difficult. I think White will go something like King D2. By the way, Daniel King, the guy with the great YouTube channel Power Chess, has an extensive analysis in chess base on this ending, especially this position after Bishop D6. So here, Black should definitely play this move and it should be slightly but clearly better for White, but possible to maybe hold for Black. But here will have to play very well. Instead, Kasparov made a very instructive mistake. He took the pawn on h4, and that looks kind of good because if you take back, then Black will just also have a weak pawn to at h4, and there's no way for White to enter. He will get his king to f4, but not any further. The bishop will sit on g6, or if the knight is on f4, it will sit on f7. So nothing to see, nothing, no big trouble, controlling all the entry squares. So it's still slightly unpleasant, but definitely a draw. But Karpov had a surprise for Kasparov here, and this blew my mind when I was a young man. I just couldn't believe the move, really. I never seen anything like it, and that is knight d2, sacrificing a pawn. Well, sacrificing is actually wrong because White will get the pawns back, and the thing is, it will create entry points for the White king, and Black will not be able to avoid the king going all the way in and winning d5, which was very surprising for me. Anyway, this move is sort of unforgettable. And the thing is, of course, here White just picks the pawn up, and h4 is falling, and suddenly White is winning a pawn, so he has to take. Okay, because he doesn't want the pawn structure with the g pawn. That will all give White too many options. Okay, so here and here White is basically threatening to play something like, oops, remove that. That was the wrong. Keep. Okay, I can't get rid of the knight. Anyway, the knight will land on this square. And here comes the king. And of course, it's annoying that you have to give up the f pawn, but there's nothing to do. And yeah, well, he couldn't defend anyway. He will lose the d pawn. He will be pushed back, and the pawn. The problem is this kind of position with the out the f pawn. With the king here is almost lost for Black. Almost always lost for Black because his king will be pushed back, and White will win the d pawn no matter what. Anyway, and this is maybe still a draw. Maybe still a draw. It's very unpleasant, but it may be still a draw. White managed to win this one. So Black lost 2 pawns, but seemed to get some active play here with the king coming. Bishop h1 was also a good move. King e3, king c4. And here I was, I didn't understand what was going on. I think the best move here is, I think it's bishop h1 actually. The surprising thing is that something like this runs into this, and White will get his king. And you can never take this because then the knight will just outbattle the bishop, and the king will be out of the game forever. And when I was watching the game, I just couldn't believe this was. But it's, of course, it's very easily winning. But just seeing it is simple. But the knight can always force a pawn through against a bishop. So here he played bishop here, and trying to, and White is of course maneuvering to either push the d pawn or win the b pawn. And here he's ready to play knight here and d5. And notice that something like here will always be met by this, and what black will never ever get the a pawn, because then king c3 and it's all over. So here, yeah, it's over here. I think he has to play bishop h1 here, and it might be difficult even for a computer to win this. There are some definite chances. In the game he played this move, and then it was just lost, threatening the check, and knight coming in here, and of course, and black gave up. The b pawn will cost the bishop, and then white will get a new queen with a d pawn. So this move, knight d2, is the one to remember, that to get squares, sometimes you'll just have to sacrifice material and paving a way for the king to enter the position. And it also shows that it's probably very unpleasant to have a bad bishop against Karpov. Anyway, this was GM Talks. I hope you enjoyed this game. Very technical ending. I think it's very instructive. It was back in 1984, so it was ages ago when I was young.